In the bustling heart of the city, in a cozy little cafe, sat Sarah, wrapped snugly in her favorite red sweater. The smell of roasted coffee beans filled the air, mingling with the sweet scent of pastries. She was hunched over her laptop, trying to finish a report for work, her brow furrowed in concentration. Outside, cars honked and people rushed by, but she remained blissfully in her own world, one filled with words and numbers. Across from her table, Jake entered the cafe. He was a tall man with shaggy brown hair and a smile that could light up the darkest room. The moment he stepped inside, a warmth radiated from him, drawing the gaze of a few patrons. But Sarah, deep in her thoughts, didn't notice. As he approached the counter to order, he glanced at her, his eyes sparkling. But Sarah just adjusted her glasses and continued typing, oblivious to the world around her. Jake ordered a steaming cup of coffee, his heart racing. He had seen Sarah in the cafe a few times before. There was something about her that captivated him, even from afar. However, he knew she was focused, and he felt hesitant to interrupt. Instead, he decided to take a seat by the window where he could steal glances at her without being too obvious. Minutes turned into an hour, and gradually the cafe filled with more people. A familiar face behind the counter, Lily, noticed Jake's lingering gaze on Sarah. She had been watching their silent exchanges over the weeks, a smile from Jake, a chance glance from Sarah, fleeting but full of potential. "Go say hi," Lily urged him with a playful nudge, but Jake only chuckled nervously, unsure of what to say. He admired Sarah from a distance, her passion for her work, the way she would smile to herself when she thought of a good idea. But for some reason, he couldn't break the barrier that separated them. With each passing minute, Jake became more anxious. He took a deep breath, gathering his courage. He would walk over, but just as he stood, Sarah yawned and stretched, her eyes finally drifting away from the laptop and landing on the cafe around her. For the first time that day, she noticed the morning rush and the lively atmosphere. As she looked around, Jake saw his chance. He approached her, ready to introduce himself, but as he stepped forward, Sarah's eyes locked onto her phone instead. She quickly glanced at a message, her face clouding with worry. Jake hesitated, the energy of his confidence slowly ebbing away. Before he could muster another word, she was deep in her screen again, missing his warm smile, his subtle invitation to connect. Feeling dejected, Jake returned to his seat. Meanwhile, Sarah continued to work, but a heaviness settled in her chest. She wasn't truly focused anymore. Occasionally, she would look up and catch snatches of life happening all around her. She wished she could be part of it, to step out of her bubble. Jake's vibrant smile lingered in her mind, a reminder of what she might be missing. After a while, Lily noticed Jake still sitting alone, a familiar sadness gracing his features. She felt a pang of empathy for him. She watched as Sarah finally lifted her gaze and for a moment met his eyes. Their contact was short, but a flicker of recognition passed between them. Sarah blinked, then returned her attention to her laptop, oblivious again. Frustrated for her and for Jake, Lily had an idea. "All right, I can't let this happen," she muttered to herself. She quickly gathered the staff and whispered her plan. They nodded, eager to help spark a connection between the two. Before long, the cafe began to buzz with an unexpected energy. One by one, the staff formed a welcome line as customers walked through the door. Each person was greeted with genuine smiles and warm hellos, while Jake, oblivious at first, watched with wonder. The cheerful atmosphere was contagious. The baristas exchanged friendly banter with regulars, laughter ringing out in the little space. Sarah finally pulled her attention from her screen, intrigued by the bubbling excitement around her. As she glanced up, she saw the staff welcoming each guest, and then she spotted Jake. His expression shifted from surprise to amused as he realized what was happening. He chuckled softly, the tension slowly loosening from his shoulders as he recognized the camaraderie among the staff. He joked to the barista nearest him. They laughed together, and suddenly the warmth of the cafe felt more inviting than ever before. The vibe, the buzz, it was electric. Encouraged by this little celebration, Jake lingered at his spot, not ready to leave just yet. Sarah, still seated, felt something shift in her chest. Maybe it was as simple as wanting to be part of this lively atmosphere, or maybe it was something deeper, a nudge telling her to take a step outside her comfort zone. Courage bubbled up within her, prompting her to glance once more at Jake. He was smiling, talking animatedly with the staff, his laughter mixing with the noises of the cafe. Sarah's heart raced. She felt that same spark she had felt earlier, the tug that made her want to know him more, but there was still that hesitation. In a moment of spontaneity, she pushed her chair back with determination and stood up. There was an opportunity here, a chance for connection. But just as she started to approach him, a rush of doubt washed over her. What if he was just a daydream, a figment of her wandering imagination? Her legs felt heavy, but her heart whispered for her to keep going. Jake, meanwhile, was feeling a rush of his own, caught up in the moment. The atmosphere, the smiles and laughter pulled him from his own worries. But then out of the corner of his eye, he caught sight of Sarah standing awkwardly a few feet away. His heart skipped a beat. She had been the reason for his hope all along. This was the moment he had waited for, but would she come over? Their eyes met, and for a heartbeat, the world around them faded away. It was just the two of them, lost in their thoughts, filled with uncertainty and a sliver of hope. Jake's smile softened, growing warmer, and he motioned her over. But Sarah hesitated, the shadows of doubt looming over her. In the background, Lily and the other staff watched, holding their breath. This was the moment they had hoped for. Would Sarah embrace it? Would she let go of her fears for just a second? Summoning her courage, Sarah took a step forward. The slight distance began to close, and her heart raced louder than ever. With every step, her doubts began to dissolve. When she reached his side, Jake's grin widened, and at that moment the cafe felt brighter, filled with endless possibilities. "Hi, I'm Sarah," she said, her voice warmer than she anticipated. Jake's smile deepened as he replied, "I'm Jake. I've noticed you too. I wasn't sure if you—" "I think I do," she admitted, feeling a flicker of excitement in her chest. It was strange but exhilarating. In a world filled with busy schedules and distractions, they had found each other amidst the noise, and it felt like magic. Behind them, the staff exchanged knowing looks, proud of the atmosphere they had created. The welcome line had sparked something beautiful. People came and went, but in this moment, Sarah and Jake were bound together by a shared connection, a spark that came alive amidst the bustling crowd. As they talked and laughed, the cafe felt more vibrant. The sounds around them faded into the background, and their focus remained on each other. There was so much to discover, so many stories to share. Sarah learned about Jake's love for hiking, his creative pursuits, and the funny little quirks of his life. Jake discovered the depths of Sarah's passions, her dreams, and the little things that made her smile. Time slipped away as they shared their dreams, fears, and the simple joys they cherished. With every moment that passed, their initial doubts fell away, transformed into something deeper, an unspoken understanding that connected them. And in the heart of the city, on a bustling morning in a cozy cafe, two lives intertwined, their stories merging into one. The warmth that once felt like only a distant thought became a reality, a path unfolding before them. As the sun streamed through the cafe's windows, painting the walls in golden light, Sarah and Jake discovered what it meant to truly see each other, to embrace possibility and let go of fear. They learned that while connections can sometimes feel like a dream, when two hearts open in the right moment, reality can take on a magical hue. For the first time that day, Sarah smiled into Jake's eyes, fully present and alive to the adventure that lay ahead, grateful for the chance she almost missed. And Jake, holding onto that smile, felt hope blossom anew as he realized that the most beautiful journeys often began with the simplest hello. Bell above the cafe door jingled as Jake walked in, his eyes immediately scanning the crowded room until they found her Sarah, sitting hunched over her laptop, her red sweater blending with the vibrant autumn colors outside. He could see her brow furrowed in concentration, every bit of her focused on the screen before her. As he entered, he flashed a smile that could light up the entire cafe, but she didn't see it. She was lost in her own world, tucked away from the lively atmosphere that surrounded her. Jake took a breath and approached the counter to order. His heart raced, not just because he was in his favorite cafe, but because of Sarah. He'd seen her here before, a regular like he was, but she had never looked up long enough to catch his eye. Today felt different, though. Today, the warmth of the sun spilled through the windows, and there was a buzzing energy in the air. He was determined to find a way to bridge the gap between them. After ordering his coffee, Jake glanced at Sarah again. She was still absorbed in her work, oblivious to the world around her. He felt a familiar tug of frustration mixed with hope. Did she even know how captivating she was? Was she aware of the way her lips curved into a soft smile when she stumped herself with a difficult line of code? He wanted to say something to make her notice, but doubt clouded his thoughts. At that moment, Lily, a barista and friend, caught his eye. She'd seen him steal glances at Sarah more than once and understood the connection he hoped for. Just as she was about to approach him, Jake raised his hand, signaling he was fine. No worries, he told her with a smile. He would find his way over, eventually. Amidst the sound of clinking cups and laughter, Jake sipped on his coffee, his thoughts drifting back to Sarah. What was stopping him from simply saying hello? Was it fear of rejection? Psychological studies have shown that people often avoid taking risks in social situations, fearing they'll be judged or ignored. Just thinking about it made his stomach twist, but today felt different. Today was the day he would bridge this gap. Yet as he hesitated, Sarah's gaze flickered briefly to her phone, a distraction pulling her away from the potential and energy buzzing around her. She finally looked up and scanned the room, catching glimpses of laughter and conversation, Jake's hopeful smile yet again unseen. Disappointment pooled in Jake's chest. He was ready to throw caution to the wind, but yet here they were, two ships passing in the night, locked within their own cylindrical worlds. As the minutes ticked by, Jake's resolve faltered. What was he going to say anyway? "Hi, I'm a stranger, and I've noticed you smiling to yourself." The thought made him cringe. Just as he was about to retreat back to his spot by the window, Lily, sensing the opportunity, stepped up. She tapped her fingers on the counter and looked around, her eyes sparkling with mischief. She called out. Her voice boomed, surprising both patrons and staff alike. Jake chuckled softly, intrigued to see what she was up to. The other baristas quickly caught on, shooting her knowing glances, and joined in without hesitation. One by one, they fell into rhythm, forming a line behind the counter. It was a line of warmth, waves of smiles, and bright eyes. Each person who entered would feel the energy, the excitement, the camaraderie. It was a cheerful chaos, a sense of community that didn't just call out to newcomers, but somehow felt like a call to Sarah as well. Curiosity tugged at her confidence. She turned her laptop away and leaned in, intrigued. It was a welcoming line. The length of it, the laughter, and the happy exchanges wrapped around her like a ribbon of joy. It struck a chord deep within her. For the first time, she felt the stirrings of excitement awaken her senses. As Jake watched this unfold, he felt a spark ignite. Perhaps this was his chance. The staff's contagious warmth pulled at him, urging him forward. But as he stood there, rooted to the floor, Sarah finally turned to him, catching his gaze for the briefest flicker of a moment. But her attention strayed again, drawn back to the welcome line forming like an embrace around her. The way her eyes lit up at the scene before her filled Jake with hope. Behind her laptop, where the weight of responsibility weighed her down, there was now wonder. The familiarity of the cafe transformed into something vibrant, alive, and inviting. And in that moment, amidst the laughter, the joy, and the teasing glances, something shifted inside Jake. He resolved to walk over even if fear clung to him like a shadow. As he moved, Jake felt the energy of the cafe shift. People watched as he approached, and this time Sarah didn't glance away. She noticed him coming near, and a flicker of surprise colored her cheeks. Heart racing, he approached her table, shifting from uncertainty to boldness he didn't realize he had. "Hey," he said, forcing a smile that he hoped matched the warmth in his heart. Sarah blinked, caught off guard by his sudden presence. "Oh, hi, I'm Jake," he introduced himself, extending a hand, breaking down the walls of apprehension. "I've noticed you here before." "Sarah," she replied, shaking his hand, her eyes widening as she took him in. They grinned, feeling the connection spark between them. "I get that." He gestured to the staff, continuing their cheerful welcome. Sarah laughed, a soft sound mingling with the happiness around them. "She really does. I had no idea this was happening today." Encouraged by her response, Jake leaned closer, his heart pounding with the thrill of opportunity. He asked, nodding toward her laptop. "Oh, just some tech stuff for work," she replied, a hint of lightness returning to her demeanor. "Nothing as fun as." She waved her hand around, summoning the ambience that had gathered around them. "Well, what if you took a break?" There was a bounce in his voice, a playful lilt that made Sarah smile. Jake knew the risk of vulnerability, but he felt it was worth the chance, and he could see the excitement building in her eyes. She teased, a playful glimmer sparking in her gaze. "I'd like to think so." He paused, searching her eyes for a glimmer of interest. The atmosphere between them thickened with possibility. Sarah's heart fluttered, part excitement, part nervousness. "You know what, I'd love that. It'll be a nice break from the tech world," she said, giddiness filling her chest. As they both laughed, the world seemed to melt away, and it was just the two of them against the noise of the cafe. They moved to a nearby table, surrounded by the warm atmosphere that had drawn them closer. It felt as if the universe had conspired to bring them together, utilizing the staff's inviting line as a bridge to connect their paths. In that brief moment, their connection blossomed like spring flowers breaking through winter's frost. They swapped stories, and Jake learned about Sarah's love for coding, how she found joy in solving complex problems, much like a puzzle waiting to be pieced together. She shared her dreams of creating apps that could change people's lives. Jake felt fascinated. "I admire that," he confessed, his voice steady. "You're not just writing code, you're building something meaningful." The sincerity in his words made Sarah's cheeks flush. It was rare for someone to understand the depths of her passion. As she spoke, he noticed the sparkle in her eyes, the joy that came alive as she shared her dreams. And for the first time, Sarah realized she had been ignoring Jake's smile not out of indifference, but from being caught in a loop of her own thoughts, the pressures of work and deadlines. She had closed herself off, missing the vibrant life that was unfolding just steps away from her. As time flowed, so did their connection. They exchanged stories about family, their childhoods, and aspirations, laughter spilling effortlessly between them. Jake felt a sense of ease wash over him, as if they had known each other for years instead of mere minutes. Jake quipped, leaning back as if coaxing her to reveal something spectacular. "I can make a mean lasagna," Sarah replied, her laughter bright and genuine. Jake's eyes twinkled. "I'm a terrible cook, but I can juggle." He raised an eyebrow with mock seriousness. Their laughter echoed, drawing the attention of other cafe-goers. It felt effortless, the way two strangers could weave their stories together. The friendly chaos of the cafe hummed around them, but they remained cocooned in their bubble, a warm sanctuary amidst the busy world. As the welcome line softened and the staff began to wind down, Sarah felt a pang of disappointment. The cafe had transformed in more than just the warm atmosphere. Something wonderful had emerged. She had opened herself to possibility, and she was grateful for it. Jake picked up on her thoughts, sensing the subtle shift in her energy. "Me too," Sarah replied, her voice genuine. A silence settled between them, comfortable and rich, filled with unspoken understanding. They both knew that this was just the beginning, that a simple smile could weave lives together in unexpected ways. Amidst a bustling cafe on a lively day, they discovered connections unfold that were both beautiful and profound. As Jake sipped his coffee and Sarah's laughter brightened the air around them, they began to envision paths intertwined and perhaps, for the first time, both felt that the world just might hold a little magic if they dared to look beyond their screens and truly engage with it. In that comforting space filled with smiles, friendship blossomed and who knows what else, all because a warm smile, once overlooked, turned into a gateway where welcomed souls connected in the most unexpected of ways. In the heart of the city, in a cozy café, two journeys began. A spark ignited, leaving a flame of connection that neither of them would forget. The moment Jake stepped into the bustling café, a whirlwind of sights and sounds enveloped him. The clatter of cups, the distant hum of laughter, and the rich aroma of freshly brewed coffee took his senses by storm. But amidst the chaos, one thing stood out, a bright smile that lit up even the dimly lit corners of the room. Long to Sarah, seated at a table tucked in the far corner, her long hair cascading over her shoulders as she stared intently at her laptop. Jake couldn't help but admire her. She was utterly absorbed in her work, tapping away at the keyboard, completely unaware of the world buzzing around her. There was an air of confidence about her, mixed with a hint of vulnerability that intrigued him. For weeks, Jake had watched her from a distance, wanting to approach but never quite finding the courage. Today felt different, like the universe was nudging him forward. He made his way to the counter, placing his order with a nervous tremor in his voice. The barista, Lily, raised an eyebrow knowingly. She had seen Jake's lingering glances at Sarah and had her own opinions about the two. "You should say hi," she nudged, her tone teasing yet encouraging, but the words caught in his throat and he simply smiled back, feigning indifference. As he waited for his coffee, he glanced over at Sarah again. She finally lifted her gaze from the screen, and for a fleeting moment their eyes met. His heart leaped. But instead of holding her stare, she quickly looked back down, her focus shifting back to whatever was on the screen. It was as if the world around her had faded away again, swallowing her whole. A pang of disappointment hit him, but he redirected his thoughts, picking up his drink and moving toward a cozy corner by the window. There he sat, taking small sips, all while stealing glances at Sarah. Each time he looked, she was in her own little bubble, eyes flicking across the screen, eyebrows furrowing at whatever challenge lay before her. It was frustrating, but he couldn't help but be intrigued. What was so captivating about her work? The cafe began to fill up, and as the crowd swelled, so did the energy in the room. Conversations mingled with laughter, creating a vibrant atmosphere. All around, baristas welcomed newcomers and exchanged cheerful banter. But still, Sarah sat, oblivious to the life teeming around her, and Jake felt an urge to change that. Couldn't she feel the buzz, the joy, the warmth of what it meant to connect with others? That thought propelled Jake to take a leap of faith. Just as he steeled himself to approach her, Lily burst out from behind the counter, a sparkle of mischief in her eyes. "All right, people," she announced, clapping her hands together, instantly capturing everyone's attention. The clinking of cups and hushed voices fell silent as everyone turned to the barista. Jake wondered, curious about her sudden enthusiasm. "We are forming a welcome line," Lily declared, her voice bold. "Starting from right here, everyone who walks in will be greeted with smiles and friendly conversation." Her excitement rippled through the crowd, igniting a wave of laughter and chatter. The atmosphere transformed, and one by one the staff fell into line, beaming at customers and drawing them in with their warmth. The baristas smiled, they teased, and customers responded enthusiastically. It felt like something special was unfolding, kind of magic in the air. Jake leaned back, mesmerized. This was exactly the kind of energy he wanted to share with Sarah. With every person who entered, there were happy exchanges. Laughter echoed through the cafe, and little by little he noticed a shift in Sarah. Her gaze drifted away from her laptop, her curiosity piqued by the lively happenings around her. She frowned slightly, but soon the edges of her lips curled into a hint of a smile as she absorbed the scene before her. The staff greeted new patrons with cheerful enthusiasm, creating an atmosphere that invited connection. There was a spirit of togetherness that made even Jake's heart swell with desire to be part of the fun. He watched as Sarah tilted her head, her brow softening. For once, she had put her work aside to observe what was happening around her. Just like that, something inside him clicked. This was his chance, but would she be ready for the leap? He decided to seize the moment. He stood up, tightening the grip on his coffee cup as he made his way across the room. As he approached her table, he was amazed by the magic in the air. The warmth felt palpable. It was a shared energy, almost like a current driving him toward her. Jake asked, the words flowing naturally as he caught her attention once more. This time she didn't shy away from his gaze. Instead, she locked eyes with him, and he felt as if time stood still. "Of course," she replied, a hint of surprise lining her voice. Her cheeks flushed slightly, and for a moment he could see the layers of worry and stress peel back to reveal someone eager to connect. "I'm Jake," he introduced himself, extending his hand as if it were the most natural thing in the world. "Sarah," she responded, shaking his hand with warmth. "Likewise," he shrugged, an easy grin spreading across his face. "I was," she admitted, her eyes darting back to the screen. "But this place, well, it just transformed, didn't it?" Jake chuckled, emphasizing his agreement. "Exactly, I think the staff is onto something." In that moment, the cafe felt even more alive, more welcoming, and he sensed the growing possibilities hanging in the air between them. Conversations flowed effortlessly, bouncing from one topic to another. As they chatted, Sarah slowly opened up, sharing her world of tech and coding, how she yearned to make a difference through her creations. Jake listened intently. He was entranced by the passion that lit up her eyes, but she hesitated as if fearing vulnerability. "I've just been focused on work, Jake understood. He shared stories of his own, of navigating the demands of work while wanting to maintain connections outside of it. "Life is too short for just work," he said, his voice steady with conviction. "It's about the moments we share, the people we meet." As their conversation deepened, Jake saw the earlier walls Sarah had built start to crumble. Their laughter punctuated the air, lighting up the little corner table where they shared their stories. He could sense her curiosity blooming, a willingness to explore something beyond her usual routine. "You have a point," she said, a newfound glimmer in her eyes. "I think I've been hiding away too much." Jake nodded, the understanding thick in the air, but that moment of connection reignited something more, a spark. He leaned forward, lowering his voice conspiratorially, "And it's not just easy. It's almost comforting, right?" The thrill of shared understanding hung between them, lighting up the rest of the cafe. Conversations flowed in waves, laughter blossomed, and for the briefest moment, everything outside those walls faded. Jake's heart raced as he began to see Sarah flourish before him, her smile becoming a beacon of light. She was breaking free from her own confines, daring to explore. As the welcome line continued to buzz with friendly interactions, Jake wondered about the impact of the moment. People were starting to notice them, their joy was palpable. He started to believe that the universe was indeed pushing them together, unraveling paths they hadn't even considered before. "How about this?" Jake proposed, excitement edging in his voice. "Let's pledge to make time to connect more outside of work. It doesn't have to be anything grand, just a chat." Sarah glanced away, a thoughtful crease forming on her brow. Then she smiled brightly, the brightness of it illuminating the room around them. "I'd like that very much," she said, her tone warm. Jake relished her words, each one sparkled like stars in a night sky. But just as he felt the thrill of connection wrapped around them, it turned to a moment of clarity for Sarah too. She said, her voice softer now. "It happens to the best of us," Jake admitted, his gaze steady on her. "There are moments when we're so caught up in our own worlds, we miss connections right in front of us." His words resonated deeply, like echoes of a shared truth. They moved in their own world, laughing, sharing stories, and weaving dreams into reality. As their connection matured amidst the atmosphere created by the cafe, it became clear that they were building something beautiful, a bridge between two lives once sealed off from each other. The staff continued to create a warm welcome, engaging every new face that entered. But for Jake and Sarah, the magic was already woven into their budding friendship, a connection that swelled between them, inviting vulnerability and truth. Through the smiles, laughter, and moments of discomfort, they began to cultivate a relationship far richer than either had expected. Sarah felt her heart open, the weight of day-to-day worries lifting as she realized that sometimes taking chances brought the brightest rewards. In the heart of the cafe, surrounded by strangers now turned friends, Jake felt something awaken too. He had taken the leap, embraced the unknown, and now, as they shared each moment, he found hope flourishing where once there was uncertainty. As the day wore on, their vows to connect grew stronger. Sarah discovered that she had the power to step outside her bubble, while Jake realized the importance of chasing that fleeting spark of connection that so often slips through our fingers. And amid the clattering of cups and bursts of laughter echoing like music, they both learned that some moments are worth taking notice of, and that sometimes all it takes is a friendly smile to change everything. It was a typical Tuesday morning, and the little cafe was surprisingly more crowded than usual. The air buzzed with the warmth of freshly brewed coffee mingling with the sweet scent of pastries. Laughter and chatter danced among the tables, filling spaces that felt vast in their familiarity. In the corner, Sarah sat hunched over her laptop. Her long hair fell in front of her face, shielding her from the world around her. She was deep in concentration, fingers flying across the keyboard, completely engrossed in the code on her screen. And then he walked in. Jake entered the cafe, a bright smile plastered across his face, a spark of hope in his chest. He took in the room, his eyes dancing from one familiar face to another. The moment his gaze landed on Sarah, everything else faded into the background. It was as if he had discovered something precious buried just under the surface. Few had made him feel this way, an irresistible urge to connect, to break through the barrier of silence that wrapped around them like thick fog. But no matter how hard he tried, his bright smile appeared to bounce off her invisible shield. Sarah never once looked up, focused solely on her work, as if the clinking of cups and the soft murmur of conversation were mere background noise, distant and irrelevant. Jake's heart sank a little. He'd seen her a few times before, always the same routine, always lost in her thoughts. What he admired most was her intensity, the way she seemed to immerse herself into whatever project consumed her. He wanted desperately to approach, to break through the bubble she had created, but fear held him back. What if she brushed him off? He ordered his coffee and took a seat at a table nearby, hoping the proximity would lend him courage. Between sips of coffee, he noticed Sarah occasionally rub her temples as if she were trying to will away the stress creeping up on her. The bustle around them continued, laughter rising and falling in vibrant waves. But in her world, it was just her and her screen, an island in the sea of connection. There was something intriguing about the whole scene. The way her eyebrows knit together in concentration felt almost artistic. He found it hard to look away, as though he were witnessing a silent film where every expression told a story. Yet, despite his admiration, a creeping anxiety began to nag at him. He was accustomed to being outgoing, he thrived in social settings, but now under the weight of unreciprocated attention, he felt invisible. Suddenly, Lily, one of the baristas, made her way into the scene. She had been watching Jake watch Sarah, her keen eyes capturing every flicker of emotion on his face. Her grin widened like a beam of light breaking through clouds. Knowing both of them well, she sensed that something needed to change. She called out, breaking the usual cafe noise. The staff paused and the commotion around them quieted. "I have an idea. Today we're going to form a welcome line. Anyone who walks in will get a smile and a nice greeting from us." Jake couldn't help but chuckle at Lily's enthusiasm. Her spirited nature was infectious. The mood shifted, customers responded with laughter and applause erupted, amps of energy surged. Jake leaned back in his chair, a grin creeping across his face. This was going to unfold beautifully, he thought. As the baristas lined up, each one eager to welcome every new face that entered, Sarah glanced away from her laptop, curious about what the sudden commotion was. Jake saw the flicker of interest in her eyes, a spark of curiosity breaking through her otherwise impenetrable focus. Maybe, he hoped, this would be the moment that opened the door. The welcome line began to take shape, a colorful display of smiling faces, ready to greet each newcomer as if reuniting with long-lost friends. The atmosphere transformed into one filled with joy, laughter echoing through the cafe, resounding like melodic notes blending harmoniously. Just as a new customer stepped into the cafe, Jake moved instinctively. He stood up, ready to join in. The chance had come. He didn't want to sit on the sidelines any longer. As he approached the barista station, ready to help, he felt a wave of energy wash over him. Here was a golden opportunity to break that barrier with Sarah, but just then his eyes caught Sarah's again. This time, however, she was watching, her face alive with wonder. As the staff welcomed a newcomer with boisterous excitement, Sarah leaned in slightly, her lips curving into a faint smile. The motion gave Jake hope, filling him with a surge of courage he hadn't expected. "Looks like they're having fun," Jake said, returning to his seat after a moment's pause, eager to keep the moment alive with Sarah. I guess it's nice to see everyone being so friendly," she replied, the walls around her voice softening just a bit. Jake could hear the change in her tone. It was subtle but clear. The buzz of connection around them began to seep into her consciousness. "Yeah, sometimes it's easy to get lost in our own worlds," he said, his voice gentle. Sarah sighed, running a hand through her hair. "I've been so focused on this project." Jake chuckled, unable to resist the moment. He gestured around him, hoping the lightness of his words would carry some warmth into the conversation. With each passing moment, the cafe continued to thrive. Customers, new and old, exchanged smiles, laughter intertwining like threads weaving a rich tapestry of togetherness. The baristas bounced from one customer to the next, their infectious energy radiating across the room. As Sarah continued to observe, Jake felt the door to new possibilities cracking open. This was the moment he had been waiting for, a chance for them to break free from their individual constraints and step together into a shared experience. What if we joined the line? Her eyes widened at the suggestion, but Jake noticed a flicker of excitement there too. "Really? Not at all. It'll be fun." The idea seemed to linger in the air, and finally, Sarah flashed a smile, one that lit up her face. She declared, adrenaline firing through her veins. They stood together, side by side, and watched as additional customers entered the cafe. Sarah nervously wrung her hands while Jake chuckled softly, trying to calm her jitters. "Just remember, we're the welcome crew." And when the next customer arrived, Jake leaned forward, his voice booming with enthusiasm. "Welcome." To his surprise, Sarah followed his lead, her nervousness melting away as she chimed in, "Yes, welcome." Laughter bled into the air, rich and contagious, and before they knew it, they were each swept up in the excitement of the moment. Sarah even caught herself laughing loudly, forgetting about the work waiting for her on her laptop. For a brief moment, everything felt different, lighter, as though a weight had been lifted. As each customer passed through their makeshift welcome line, one by one, smiles surged forth like ripples in a pond. With each greeting, Sarah grew warmer, her heart opening to the joy around her. Laughter echoed, and with it came a newfound realization. Connection was everywhere, waiting to be discovered. As they continued exchanging friendly greetings, the warm buzz of togetherness wrapped around Jake and Sarah, drawing them closer. It was electric. They shared knowing glances every time a customer returned their smiles. She had become part of something larger, a community filled with simple joys. It was contagious. As they wrapped up with a particularly cheerful customer, Sarah turned to Jake, her eyes dancing with excitement. "I can't believe how much fun this is. That's the beauty of it," he replied, his voice steady, filled with hope. The day continued to unfold, and soon it felt as though they were not just welcoming strangers, but crafting their own extraordinary narrative together. Each greeting became a thread weaving deeper connections between them, transforming the cafe into a haven of warmth and laughter. As the hour wore on, it became easier for Sarah to step outside her shell. She began to share her thoughts and ideas about coding and the world she belonged to, an intricate web of innovation and creativity. Jake listened, entranced by her passion. He said gently, "I do," she said, her voice more confident now. "I want it to make a difference." "In here it's different," Jake said, a smile curling his lips. "You should remember to step back every once in a while to enjoy the chaos." "I hadn't realized how much I needed this," she admitted softly, glancing around at the busy cafe before returning her gaze to Jake. The more they connected, the clearer it became this was a moment of transformation. She was beginning to shed her previous self, moving beyond the confines of stress and focus into something beautifully alive. Jake felt a resonating energy within him, recognizing that they were both crafting a new reality amid the laughter and the connections that enveloped them. When they finally paused to take a breath, Sarah leaned back, her smile widening. "Thank you for this," she said, her tone softer but filled with sincerity. "No thanks necessary," Jake replied with a shrug that felt effortless. Their shared laughter created a bond that felt strong, a connection built on the laughter of strangers and the warmth of welcome. The cafe felt richer, fuller, and suddenly the world outside didn't seem as daunting. Each moment they shared brought with it a possibility, a spark, a reminder of the beauty of human connection. In the heart of the cafe, amid new friends and laughter, Jake and Sarah found themselves woven into a tapestry that would stay with them far longer than that day. They discovered that every smile could open the door to something wonderful, leading them both from isolation into a brighter, shared experience. And so, as the day faded, as laughter wrapped around them like a warm embrace, both Jake and Sarah took a breath, allowing themselves to reflect on how easily they had ignored possibility before. Together, they had uncovered a rare joy, a place filled with connection, warmth, and the promise of new beginnings. Sometimes all it takes is a simple smile to light the way forward. In the heart of a bustling city, during the rush of a typical Monday morning, the little cafe corner was alive with the hum of conversation. The aroma of freshly brewed coffee wafted through the air, mixing with the sweet scent of pastries displayed behind the glass counter. It was a comforting scene, one that inspired warmth and connection. Yet amidst the vibrant atmosphere, Sarah sat alone, eyes glued to her laptop screen. Her fingers danced across the keys, completely absorbed in whatever task weighed on her mind. She was so focused that she didn't notice the world around her, as if the sounds of clinking cups and cheerful chatter were just a distant echo. It was a routine she had settled into a comfortable bubble that kept her isolated from the vibrant life just outside her reach. Jake pushed through the cafe door, and the familiar jingle of the bell above caught his attention. He scanned the room, taking in the lively energy before his gaze landed on Sarah. There she was, her brow furrowed in concentration, completely oblivious to everything around her. His heart raced as he caught a glimpse of her unyielding focus. It was mesmerizing and somewhat frustrating at the same time. He had seen her here before, weeks ago, and had always been drawn to her. She was breathtaking in her quiet intensity, her creativity bound up in the strokes of the keyboard. Jake longed to break through the barrier of silence that surrounded her, to share a moment of connection. But every time he mustered the courage to approach, she would be swallowed back into her world. As he waited for his coffee, he felt a rush of determination. Today was going to be different. Today, he would finally introduce himself. He glanced at her once more, the hope tinged with anxiety. He couldn't just let another day pass without trying, but as he approached the counter, the barista Lily caught his eye. She had been watching him, a knowing smile forming on her lips. "You know, for all the smiles you've given her from across the room, she's had her head down every time," she teased gently. "Today's the day," Jake replied, his voice steady. "I'm going to talk to her, Lily chuckled, not missing a beat. "Just be yourself, she'll notice." Her encouragement wrapped around him like a warm blanket, lifting his spirits a little. As Jake took his coffee and turned back toward the cafe, only to lose confidence again. Sarah was still embedded in her work, completely unaware of the quiet storm brewing within him. He took a deep breath, trying to ground himself, but it felt heavy. Then a sudden shift disrupted the room's ambience. Lily clapped her hands to gather everyone's attention. "All right, everyone," she announced, her enthusiasm radiating across the cafe as conversations quieted down. She declared, her voice bright and infectious. "Anyone who walks through the door will get our warmest greetings." Jake felt his heart leap. This was his chance. The energy in the room shifted almost palpably, and smiles erupted among both customers and staff. The idea of forming a welcome line transformed the atmosphere from ordinary to extraordinary. Jake watched, spellbound and captivated, as the barista settled into position, ready to greet newcomers with exuberance. There was a warmth in the air, a sense of togetherness, and slowly he saw Sarah's gaze lift from her screen, curiosity igniting her features as she noticed the sudden shift in energy. There it was, the welcome line would break her trance. Jake felt hope swell in his chest as he watched her observe the transformation unfolding around her. He thought that if she could see just how vibrant and alive the cafe was, perhaps she would open up, share a smile, maybe even talk. He took a step closer, caught up in the excitement. As customers began to enter, greeted by the enthusiastic staff, Jake felt the thrill of being part of something larger. Each new face brought with it an opportunity to connect, and he wanted to share that with Sarah. But as customers filtered through, he noticed something. The longer Sarah watched, the more hesitant she appeared. Her brows knit together, and it was evident she was still struggling to break free from her self-imposed cocoon. She glanced at her laptop, then back toward the festivities, a glimmer of interest hidden in her eyes. "They really seem to enjoy it," she remarked quietly, almost to herself. Jake responded, his voice filled with enthusiasm. "It's like a wave of happiness washing over everyone." The facade of her concentration slipped just a little as she allowed herself a half-smile. Jake leaned in, his excitement mounting. "What if we join the line? We could welcome the next customer together." She hesitated, biting her lip as uncertainty danced in her eyes. "Definitely," Jake urged, his heart thumping louder at the idea. For a moment, Sarah weighed the choice before her, running through the social rules in her mind like a checklist, but she could feel the spark of energy from the cafe, and it tugged at her. Finally, she nodded slowly. As they positioned themselves in the line, Jake felt a surge of anticipation. This was it, the very moment could change everything. The room felt charged with electricity, and when the next customer stepped through the door, Jake beamed, saying, "Welcome." Sarah mirrored his enthusiasm, surprising herself as enthusiasm colored her voice. "Yes," the customer grinned in return, their faces lighting up the cafe even brighter. Each welcome turned into mini celebrations, each smile return met with the radiant energy Sarah had never expected to feel. Hairline fractures in her focused demeanor began to widen as laughter floated around them. As the next few customers passed through, the mood shifted and Sarah felt it deeply. Something in her heart began to thaw. The wall she had built around herself started to dissolve with each shared smile. "See," Jake said, his eyes reflecting the excitement of the moment. Sarah beamed back, the corners of her mouth lifting for the first time that day. With each greeting, their connection strengthened, building a bridge between once distant beings, igniting a spark of warmth within her. The bustling chatter of the cafe faded into the background as their laughter intertwined amid lively interactions with customers and staff alike. As they continued welcoming newcomers, Jake shared stories about himself, stories that flowed easily now that Sarah had joined in the fun. He talked about his work, his passions, and how moments like this filled his heart with joy. He dared to glance at Sarah every so often, searching for that glimmer of recognition, a story of her own that was waiting to be told. "You know," Sarah began, a draw of confidence in her voice, "I've been working on an app idea that I think has potential to help people connect better." Jake's interest peaked, and he leaned in even closer, captivated. "That sounds incredible." As she explained, the corners of her lips curled into a smile, illuminating her entire face. She came alive with passion, describing her vision of creating connections through an application, a tool to break the barriers people hid behind. Jake listened intently, feeling every ounce of her excitement and trepidation. "Why don't you take a leap, share it with the world?" he encouraged, his enthusiasm bubbling outward like a spring. Sarah opened up about her fears, how doubt often overshadowed her dreams. But for the first time in a long while, she felt a flicker of hope igniting. This connection, this moment of warmth and acceptance had swept away the heavy burden of insecurity, if only for an instant. "I guess I just need to believe in myself," she admitted softly. Jake replied, and in that moment he looked deeply into her eyes, clarity shining through. "You have something special to give to the world." The moment hung between them, suspended in time as they allowed their shared energy to deepen. The cafe continued to swirl with excitement, but for a heartbeat, it was just the two of them, two souls recognizing pieces of themselves in each other. As they returned to welcoming more customers, Sarah's voice grew steadier. Each friendly interaction solidified their connection, building a sanctuary where fears could be faced and dreams could take flight. The welcoming line had not just brought joy to the customers, but it also created a cocoon of camaraderie between them, blossoming from shy glances to genuine laughter. Hours passed, and as lunchtime rolled around, the steady stream of customers subsided. Sarah and Jake shared a moment, catching their breath as they reluctantly stepped away from the line that had provided them a gateway into each other's lives. Sarah exclaimed, her energy still pulsing with excitement. "Anytime," Jake replied, genuinely meaning it. With her heart lighter than it had been all day, Sarah began to realize just how much she had missed simple interactions and connecting with those around her. Jake glanced around as the mood softened. The staff laughed, sharing their thoughts on the day. "Well, the party isn't over just yet." "Nah," Sarah countered playfully, her eyes sparkling with a hint of mischief. With laughter bubbling inside, they settled at a table, the remnants of the day swirling around them. The weight that once felt suffocating lifted, allowing them to bask in the shared joy of the day. Jake asked, leaning closer. And with that question, Sarah opened up anew, articulating her ideas, her dreams wrapping around her like a warm embrace. The energy between them shifted again, morphing into something profoundly beautiful, the acknowledgement of shared hopes in a world that sometimes felt so vast, yet held so many possibilities. Jake felt connected to her experience, an echo of understanding resonating within. "You know, I think you'll definitely take that leap," he encouraged. Sarah's smile widened, her spirit soaring as they spoke. They shared personal anecdotes, and from that point on, Sarah made a resolution to step into her power. Just like Jake had invited her to embrace possibility, she vowed to take risks, reach out, and let her voice be heard. As the cafe grew quieter, the sun began to peek through the windows, golden light spilling onto their table, warming the hearts of everyone inside. Jake and Sarah closed their time together, forging a bond amidst the shared laughter, revealing that sometimes what began as a missed smile could blossom into an unexpected friendship. The little cafe had done more than serve coffee that day. It had unknowingly crafted a moment of beauty-changing lives with simple acts of connection. And as they said their goodbyes, both Jake and Sarah understood that sometimes all it takes is a single smile to spark something meaningful, a realization that would illuminate their paths forward. In that heart of the city cafe, two souls connected and stepped out from their separate lives, forever changed by the simplest of gestures, leaving behind the comfortable silence for the joy of shared laughter, dreams, and the unyielding power of connection. The door to the cafe swung open, and the soft chime of a bell echoed through the room, blending with the warm hum of conversation. It was a familiar scene, patrons settling in with steaming cups of coffee, laughter mingling with the clatter of plates, the rich aroma of fresh pastries filling the air. Yet in the corner, a tension simmered under the surface, unnoticed by the bustling crowd. Sarah sat at a small table, her laptop open, her fingers tapping rhythmically against the keys. She was engrossed in a project, her brow furrowed in concentration, oblivious to the world around her. Each time she glanced up briefly, her gaze skimmed over the cheerful interactions happening around her. But her thoughts quickly drifted back to her work, stifling any impulse to engage. Across the cafe, Jake stood with his coffee, scanning the room. With shaggy hair and an easy smile that seemed to light up the place, he pushed through a mix of excitement and nervousness. His eyes danced around the tables, and finally they fell on her. There she was, the one who had captured his attention, and yet every time he ventured a smile in her direction, he was met with indifference. She remained lost in her own world, unaware of the warmth he was offering. Today, however, Jake felt a pull inside him. He had come to the cafe with the intention of talking to her, but as he took his first sip of coffee, the familiar flutter of anxiety tightened around his chest. What could he even say? He didn't want to be just another stranger, he wanted to be someone who truly caught her interest. Meanwhile, Sarah felt the weight of her tasks pressed down harder. As her workload grew, so did the routine she had formed, disconnected yet safe. She had entered into a cycle of quiet obsession with her work, convinced that focus was the key to success. Little did she know how much she was missing outside her bubble. Jake watched from a distance, his heart pounding. He tried to muster the strength to approach her, but just as he stood, he witnessed something unexpected. Lily, the barista, came forward and clapped her hands to gather the attention of the cafe. "All right, everyone," she announced, her voice ringing with enthusiasm. "Let's form a welcome line for everyone who walks in." The reaction was swift. Laughter erupted and customers gathered, curiosity piqued by the idea. Jake felt the energy shift, excitement coursing through the cafe like electricity. This was a beautiful opportunity, not just for the patrons, but also for him and Sarah. As the staff lined up, ready to greet newcomers with waves and cheerful smiles, Jake noticed Sarah's eyes flicker toward them. For the first time, a hint of interest danced across her features. He knew she was still hesitant, still clinging to her work, but this was the moment he needed. It was now or never. He walked over to where the staff formed their line, joining them with renewed conviction. "Come on, Sarah," he called out, his voice filled with excitement. She looked up, caught off guard. "I don't know," she replied cautiously, the smile on her face all but wavering. "They want joy," Jake urged, his grin wider than ever. There was something about his energy that pulled her in. Despite her reluctance, something sparked inside her, a flicker of curiosity. With a deep breath and a nudge from the ever-encouraging Lily, she finally stood up, closing her laptop with a soft click. "All right, I guess it could be fun," she conceded, a small smile breaking through her uncertainty. As they formed the welcome line together, Jake couldn't help but steal glances in Sarah's direction. She appeared different. The walls she had built around herself started to crumble. The warmth of the collective energy enveloped them, and they stood side by side, both nervous yet exhilarated. Jake said to the first customer, his voice booming with enthusiasm. Sarah echoed him, her tone warmer now as she caught onto his spirit. The customer grinned in return, and it broke something open inside Sarah. She laughed, and her nervousness began to fade with each new greeting. Each smile returned. Sarah said to the next patron, and her excitement was infectious. Jake noticed how her eyes lit up, her earlier doubt melting away. With each new wave of customers, the energy in the cafe soared and they became more in sync. They were not just two scattered souls, but a team, united under the banner of joy and warmth. They exchanged looks that carried unspoken histories, laughter that resonated deeply, and smiles that seemed to reflect something greater than either had anticipated. Jake asked during a brief lull, turning to Sarah with genuine curiosity. "It's wonderful," she admitted, her expression softening. "Right," he caught her eye, and a wave of understanding passed between them, an acknowledgement of the world they had both chosen to occupy. As the cafe buzzed with life, Sarah felt something shift within herself. The weight of her work melted away, revealing open spaces where possibilities danced. She hadn't embraced joy in a long time. But just as the realization settled in, she quickly returned her focus to the next customer, letting laughter spill forth. "Welcome," she cheered, catching the delight in every newcomer's response, each smile echoing back. The rhythm of the welcome line turned into a dance of interaction. Jake and Sarah grew bolder, engaging in light banter and playfulness with every patron. They became a duo, radiant beams of positivity in a world that sometimes felt heavy. Jake mused, glancing over at Sarah. Her eyes sparkled. "I used to think such things were just wishful thinking, but today," he nodded, knowing all too well how easy it was to forget the simple pleasures when life's heaviness took over. In her company, he felt a kindred spirit emerge, someone who understood the need for connection, who had once been swallowed up by their own limitations but was finally breaking free. As the minutes turned into an hour, the welcoming line began to dwindle. Patrons settled in, enjoying their drinks and pastries, but Sarah and Jake continued to share stories, their laughter intertwining. She discovered layers within him she hadn't noticed before, and he found the fragility behind her fierce dedication. Each personal story unfolded like pages in a well-loved book. Jake asked with a roguish grin, his curiosity piqued. Sarah chuckled softly, and her eyes glimmered. "I can cook a mean pasta." "I'd love to try that sometime," he said, the words tumbling out before he had a chance to catch them. Sarah teased lightly, but her gaze lingered on his, silencing any self-doubt. He replied, heart racing, "I mean, look at today." Her laughter rang through the cafe like a melody, and Jake felt a warmth wash over him. There was something undeniably special about this moment, but uncertainty still lingered beneath the joy. "You know," she said quietly, her voice dropping to a whisper, "I have to admit that I've often ignored people in my life." Jake nodded, understanding the weight behind her words. "I get that sometimes it feels safer that way." "Right, it's as if a door opened today that I didn't even know was there," Sarah confessed, her honesty taking root between them. The cafe pulsated with the energy of new connections, strangers and acquaintances intertwining through shared smiles. And he felt like they were amidst this beautiful synergy, the world of possibilities stretching in front of them like an open road. Suddenly, the cafe door swung open again, and a young couple entered, holding hands and giggling. The noise of their arrival brought a twinkle to Jake's eye. He said, moving to the front of the welcome line. "Welcome," they exclaimed in unison. The couple returned their excitement with smiles so bright that it radiated joy throughout the room. As Jake looked over, he caught sight of Sarah's face. Her eyes sparkled with delight as she embraced the spirit of connection once more. With every new person that walked through the door, she shone brighter, every moment unfolding, weaving them together in a tapestry of shared experiences. Once the couple settled in with their drinks, Jake turned back to Sarah. She asked, still riding the wave of exhilaration. "I say we host a little thank you gathering here next week," he suggested, hope painting his voice. "We could invite some friends, let them join in on the fun of connection." The thought sparked a rush of excitement. Sarah grinned widely, unable to resist the idea. "That sounds amazing, fantastic, let's make it happen," he said, smiling back. He knew this was more than just a party. It would be a celebration of connection, a reminder that they were not alone in the world. As the cafe began to close for the day and patrons trickled out, Jake and Sarah remained, basking in the afterglow of laughter and camaraderie. They shared stories of their lives, their dreams, and what brought them to that moment. Jake found himself lost in her passion, hanging on to every word that dripped from her lips. Each story painted a vivid picture of hope and possibility. Slowly, they packed up their things, their connection deepening with every passing moment. The burst of energy the welcome line had created lingered like a warm embrace. Outside, the stars began to twinkle, dark velvet strewn with a sprinkle of light, a mirror to the possibilities blooming between them. As they prepared to leave, Jake turned to Sarah, a glimmer of courage evident in his eyes. "You know, I really enjoyed today. Thank you for stepping out with me." Sarah met his gaze, a depth of understanding reflected in her eyes. "I'm thankful too," she confessed. "I've been trapped in my own head for so long, and today showed me how much I value meaningful interactions." He nodded, realizing there was something profound being woven into this fabric of newfound friendship. It was more than surface-level connection. It was a foundation forming, a bridge between two lives that had danced around each other in silence until a simple line broke the ice. As they said their goodbyes, Jake felt a spark of hope igniting within him. He hadn't just met someone who challenged him, but someone who invited him into her world, someone he wanted beside him as they celebrated the beauty of connection. In the heart of that little cafe, amidst laughter and warmth, Jake and Sarah stepped away from their isolation to embrace the promise of what could be. They had discovered that sometimes it only takes a smile, a welcome line, to open doors to new beginnings. Together they ventured forth into the night, both excited to explore the journey of connection and the magic that awaited them. The bell above the cafe door chimed, cutting through the afternoon lull as Jake stepped inside. The warm aroma of roasted coffee beans wrapped around him like a cozy blanket, and the hum of soft chatter invited him in. But his eyes were drawn immediately to a familiar sight, a figure tucked away in the corner, lost in her world. There sat Sarah, her long hair cascading down like a curtain, effectively blocking out the vibrant life around her. She was furiously typing on her laptop, brows knitted together in concentration, seemingly unaware of everything else happening in the bustling cafe. Jake had seen her here before, week after week, and every time he felt a magnetic pull toward her. He took a deep breath, hopeful yet anxious. Today, it wouldn't be just another day. He had caught her eye a few times, had even summoned the courage to send a friendly smile her way, but always to no avail. What was it about her that captivated him, and yet made it so hard to connect? The relentless thoughts raced through his mind as he stepped up to the counter to place his order. As the barista prepared his coffee, he glanced back at Sarah. She had yet to look up, lost in the screen in front of her. Just as he let out a sigh, Lily, the barista, caught his eye. She had a razor-sharp intuition, and in less than a second, she grasped what was happening. "You should say hi to her," she said matter-of-factly, with a hint of encouragement in her tone, her hands wiping down the counter with a rhythm that suggested familiarity. Jake chuckled nervously, shaking his head. "What if she's too busy for that? She's just in her zone," Lily replied, rolling her eyes playfully. "But everyone deserves to feel a little warmth in their day. You've got a great smile." Jake laughed nervously. He took his coffee and moved toward a comfy spot by the window where he could keep stealing glances at Sarah without feeling too invasive. As he sat there, he thought about how people often skim through life, lost in the routine of their day. Sarah was one of them. Deep down, he wanted to break through the invisible bubble she had formed, a barrier that seemed so impenetrable. Maybe there was more than what met the eye, and that's what he wanted to discover. Minutes passed, and he continued to catch fleeting glimpses of Sarah. She would occasionally stretch, running her fingers through her hair, but her gaze was always drawn back to her laptop. She seemed to be producing something profound, and he admired her focus from afar. It stirred something within him, the courage to step closer to her, to learn about that world behind her screen. But just as he steeled himself for what felt like an inevitable confession, the situation took an unexpected turn. Lily clapped her hands loudly to gather everyone's attention, her voice breaking the soft background noise. "Okay, everyone," she announced, her eyes blazing with excitement. The cafe quieted down, all eyes trained on her as she continued. "We're going to create a welcome line for everyone who walks in." The walls of the cafe seemed to vibrate with the newfound energy. Laughter rippled through the room, and patrons began to glance at one another, their curiosity piqued. Jake leaned forward, fully engaged. This was it. This was the opportunity he had been waiting for. Perhaps this would provide an opening, a chance for Sarah to break free from her concentrated haze. Lily looked around, her eyes sparkling. "Who's with me?" Without missing a beat, the staff gathered, positioning themselves along the entrance, ready to welcome newcomers with open arms and big smiles. Jake's heart raced as he saw Sarah look up for the first time. The tension in her shoulders eased slightly as she observed the friendly chaos beginning to unfold. There was something magical about the cafe's atmosphere, transforming from a cozy corner into a vibrant gathering place. "Sarah," Jake shouted, his voice filled with enthusiasm, even surprising himself. She asked, glancing around as if she were somehow included in the spectacle. "Yeah, let's join the welcome line." He couldn't convince himself to stop smiling, his excitement bubbling over. She hesitated, glancing at her laptop as if it were a safety net torn away from her grasp. She murmured, her voice wavering. "Trust me, it's going to be great. Just think of all the smiles we can share," Jake encouraged, speaking genuinely, joining the momentum around them. Finally, after what felt like hours of deliberation, Sarah stood up, her laptop closed and stowed away. She announced, her tone shifting, a hint of excitement creeping into her voice. The two of them made their way to the front of the welcome line, Jake's heart pounding in anticipation. Sarah appeared slightly nervous, but there was a spark behind her eyes that hinted at a willingness to embrace the moment. As the first customer walked through the door, Jake shouted, "Welcome." Sarah echoed, her voice mixing with his. The excited customer turned and beamed back at them, and as they greeted more patrons, Jake saw Sarah's confidence bloom. With every sincere welcome, her initial hesitance fell away, uncovering a side of her he hadn't seen before. Laughter spilled out, and soon they were caught up in the joy, not just of serving others, but of finding a connection through shared experience. "See," Jake said, the thrill of connection roaring from his core. I didn't realize how much I needed this, Sarah admitted, her smile widening. With each new face that entered, they welcomed them with enthusiasm, cheering on the smiles that blossomed in return. Each interaction became a heartbeat, a rhythm of kindness pulsating through the cafe, melting away the isolation of the prior moments. "Welcome," Jake called out to another guest, tossing in some extra flair. Sarah mirrored him, her laughter blending with his, creating a harmonious chorus that resonated through the cafe. It was as if they became the embodiment of joy itself. The energy shifted, and Sarah found herself fully engaged. With every customer greeted, she shared snippets of herself, her quirks, her laughter, her warmth. Something about the open-heartedness of the moment allowed her spirit to dance, unfettered by the shackles of routine. Jake noticed her transformation, who she was becoming in these golden moments. "You know, when I first saw you here, I thought you seemed really talented, but also a little isolated," he asked, curiosity twinkling in his eyes. Sarah paused, contemplating. Jake nodded, understanding the weight behind her words. Many people did get lost in their obligations and pressures, sometimes neglecting the essential human interactions that brighten life. "That's exactly it," he said. As the welcoming line continued, Jake and Sarah fell into a flowing rhythm. They exchanged glances full of excitement and encouragement, sharing snippets from each interaction, building up a shared narrative. The cafe began to feel less like a meeting point and more like their own stage, an inviting ground for their connection to blossom. Suddenly, another customer walked in and the ambience shifted yet again. It was a young girl with bright eyes, holding hands with her parents. "Welcome." Jake greeted, his voice filling with warmth. With her smile radiating magic, something stirred within Sarah. She said, realizing the impact of the moment, "It's all in the simple act of kindness." Jake replied, his heart swelling at the sight of her joy. For the first time, Sarah began to understand the profound impact connections could have on a person's life. The acknowledgement, the affirmation, it was powerful in ways she hadn't imagined before. As the customers flowed, Sarah felt a warmth enveloping her, a sense of belonging she hadn't experienced in ages. Each interaction moved her higher, like stepping stones towards something greater. She had lost herself over the years in work, but today reminded her of what it was like to truly engage and embrace life. Sarah asked during a brief lull, her curiosity piqued. "Absolutely," Jake said confidently. "Why not? Let's make it a regular thing," she suggested. The excitement in her voice reflected the fiery determination growing within her. They exchanged grins, their connection deepening in unison, two people intertwined in purpose and camaraderie, both fueled by the kindness they had witnessed today. As the afternoon wore on, the cafe began to slow to a gentle hum, and they completed their welcome line for the day. Exhausted but exhilarated, they finally stepped back, noting the shift the event had created in the atmosphere and within themselves. "Today was amazing," Sarah said, her eyes sparkling. "Thank you for pushing me to join." Jake smiled, a warmth radiating from his heart. "You did that for yourself, too." The words resonated deeply with her. She stepped back, her smile reflecting an understanding that perhaps they had both changed today. In this shared moment, she felt free, alive, and open to the world. As they gathered their things, Sarah looked at Jake, feeling a bond grow deeper than mere acquaintanceship. "Can we meet again?" Jake's heart raced. He hadn't expected this invitation, and yet it felt right, for sure. "Let's exchange numbers," he said, feeling a warmth wash over him. After swapping contact details, they walked out of the cafe together, the sun hanging low in the sky, painting everything in hues of orange and pink. As they made their way down the street, the world around them felt different, filled with potential and connections waiting to be forged. "I'm excited about creating positive moments, not just for ourselves, but for others," Sarah said, apprehensively but with growing confidence. Jake grinned, feeling inspired. "Absolutely." With the cafe fading behind them, the glow of possibility illuminated the path ahead. They had taken the leap together, broken through the barriers of isolation, and discovered the magic that lay hidden in connection. In that moment on the bustling city street, a shared smile, an invitation to connect, and a line of welcoming voices created a bond that neither of them had anticipated. The beauty of it all filled them with hope and ignited a fire they couldn't wait to explore together. What started as an ignored smile had transformed into a journey of friendship, adventure, and the promise of endless connections waiting just beneath the surface. And in a world that often overlooks simple connections, Jake and Sarah would not only cherish but celebrate each step forward. Jake walked through the cafe door, a bright smile tugging at the corners of his lips. The familiar jingle of the bell above announced his presence, but it also sent a wave of anticipation through him. Today was the day he would finally approach her, the woman who had unknowingly occupied his thoughts for weeks. He scanned the room until his gaze landed on her, Sarah, sitting at her usual spot in the far corner. Her brown hair fell over her shoulders, partially obscuring her face as she typed furiously on her laptop. The soft glow of the screen reflected in her glasses, but her focus was so intense that she seemed completely unaware of everything around her. In that moment, Sarah would have been deeply engrossed in a world of code, algorithms, and the demands of work. But for Jake, that world felt like a fortress, one that he wanted to breach. He had noticed her in the cafe before, the way she would occasionally glance around but always return to her work. Each time he tried to catch her eye and offer a friendly smile, she seemed to look right through him as if she were locked in a separate universe, a place with no room for interaction. Jake took a deep breath. He had anticipated this moment, yet doubt crept in. What if today was like all the others? What if she continued to ignore him? But as he stepped toward the counter to order his coffee, he was determined to find out. Lily, the barista, greeted him with her trademark smile. She could sense his hesitation even before he spoke. "Maybe," Jake replied, glancing over at Sarah, who was still completely absorbed, "but I don't want to interrupt her." Lily chuckled. "Sometimes the best thing is to give someone a reason to look up. She's here, so that means she probably wants to be somewhere else too." With a warm cup of coffee in hand, Jake turned back towards Sarah. Moment he stood frozen, watching the busy scene unfold around her. Conversations flowed, laughter echoed, and people connected. Yet there was a gap right where she sat, a small island of solitude in a sea of warmth. Just as he was about to retreat back to the safety of his table, the room buzzed with energy as Lily clapped her hands, her voice ringing with excitement. "Okay, everyone." The cafe quieted down, all eyes on her as she continued. "Let's form a welcome line for everyone who walks in." At that moment, Jake felt something shift within him. Could this be the catalyst that would finally get Sarah to notice? Sure enough, Sarah's head lifted at Lily's announcement, her eyes narrowing slightly as she began to process what was happening around her. Excitement rippled through the cafe, and the warmth in the air began to spark a flicker of interest in her. Jake called out, his voice rising in hopeful enthusiasm. "Join us." She replied, barely meeting his gaze. "Don't overthink it. Just think of what a smile can do for someone," he encouraged. His heart raced as he saw a flicker of uncertainty cross her face. Finally, after a moment of hesitation, Sarah stood up and Jake felt a rush of victory. She exclaimed, a slight grin appearing on her lips. As they both moved toward the entrance, Jake couldn't help but feel a surge of adrenaline. The welcoming line began to take shape, each staff member standing tall and beaming with bright smiles, ready to greet newcomers. Jake and Sarah positioned themselves side by side, a duo united in their mission to spread joy. Jake shouted to the first customer who stepped inside, the excitement bubbling over in his voice. Sarah echoed, her delivery more tentative but gradually growing in confidence. With a few more customers flowing through the door, something magical began to happen. The two of them transformed from strangers into a pair radiating warmth and enthusiasm. The laughter, the smiles, it all flowed effortlessly between them. Jake noticed subtle changes in Sarah. She began to lean into the welcome, her smile becoming more genuine with each greeting they shared. As the cafe buzzed with life, she seemed to shed her previous hesitance, becoming more animated in her interactions. Jake teased playfully. Sarah shot back lightly. A spark ignited between them, and with each new customer, the rhythm of their connection deepened. The welcoming line became an instrument of joy, each person who stepped through the door adding a note to the symphony they were creating. Suddenly, a young girl entered, her wide eyes taking in the scene. Sarah exclaimed, kneeling down to meet her gaze. The girl's face lit up in response. She said, her brown pigtails bouncing as she skipped toward the counter. Jake caught the moment in his mind, that innocent joy radiating a warmth that sent shivers down his spine. It reminded him how powerful connection could be, how a simple smile could change everything. "This feels amazing," Sarah murmured, glancing sideways at Jake, her voice tinged with disbelief. "See," he replied, his own excitement palpable. Each new welcome further solidified their bond, creating a bridge they hadn't realized they needed. The cafe continued to fill with energy, conversations flourished, and new friendships were formed. While Jake lost himself in the joyful chaos, he caught glimpses of Sarah. Each smile she shared turned the corner of her mouth upward just a little more, her eyes shining brighter as though a light had been ignited within her. But just as Jake felt they were reaching a high, the crowd began to thin. Fewer customers trickled in, and the energy in the room began to wane. Sarah watched as the laughter grew distant, the connections fading into the background. She asked softly, her voice careful, as they turned away from the entrance. "Of course we can keep it going, just think of it as a fun project," Jake responded, trying to capture that spark. But Sarah hesitated. "What if I can't keep up with this moment? What if it was just today and then I retreat back to?" Jake vowed, feeling a wave of determination wash over him. "Today is just the beginning. Think about it, someone else's day could change because we show up." "Thank you," she said quietly. The sincerity of his words resonated, warm and inviting. In that swirl of vulnerability, Jake felt a deep yearning to connect more than ever. Just as they were turning to pack up, a new group of customers entered, the bustling sound returning to the cafe. Jake's heart raced. Jake couldn't suppress his excitement. They both shouted, their voices ringing out in harmony. But just as they greeted the newcomers, Sarah's expression shifted, her excitement flickering as she stepped back a moment. It was as if the weight of her earlier doubts had suddenly returned, an invisible barrier forming between them again. Jake asked, confused by her sudden withdrawal. I need to step outside for a moment," she said, her voice trembling. The vulnerability in her voice made Jake's heart sink. He offered, concern etching his features. she reassured, but he could see the uncertainty shadowing her face. With that, she slipped away from the welcome line, moving toward the cafe door. Jake felt a knot tightening in his chest as he watched her go. What had just happened? Everything had felt so bright, so dynamic, and now it was as if the light had flickered out. The cafe buzzed around him, but Jake felt isolated, confusion swirling in his mind. He turned back to the customers who had strolled in. Tried to keep the momentum going with smiles and friendly greetings, but his heart wasn't in it. The laughter and excitement he had felt moments earlier seemed to fade, dulled by concern. As Sarah stepped outside, she leaned against the cool glass of the cafe door, taking in the rush of life around her. The vibrant atmosphere within the cafe felt like a stark contrast to the thoughts swirling in her mind. She had enjoyed the moment truly, but when the laughter faded, shadows of self-doubt crept back. Could she keep this up? In that moment of hesitation, she felt the barriers she'd built around herself tighten once more, threatening to close her off again. But just as she wrestled with that inner turmoil, a couple walked past her, their hands intertwined as they rushed into the cafe, joy radiating through their laughter. The sight sent a small ripple of warmth through her. Maybe it was possible. Maybe one small step outside of her comfort zone could lead to so much more. But just then, her phone buzzed in her pocket. She pulled it out, her heart sinking as she glanced at the screen. A message from work stared back at her, urgent and demanding, pulling her back into the world that had held her captive for so long. As she read the message, her hand tightened around the phone. What was she doing? She had stepped out to breathe, but was still tethered to the demands of her job, the expectations that weighed down her spirit. Inside, Jake stood waiting, wondering what had happened. Should he go after her? The energy surrounding him felt tenser now, and the warm spark they had just shared was dwindling. Would she come back? Through the glass door, he caught a glimpse of Sarah standing there, her expression shifting as she grappled with her thoughts. Anxiety welled up inside him like a storm, desperate to break free. He shouted, his voice rising above the din of the cafe. Don't let it win. Her gaze flashed toward him, uncertainty skimming across her face. Did she hear him? Did she understand what he meant? The moment stretched, tension seeping into the air, but then he saw a flicker of recognition in her eyes. She was fighting, torn between the pull of expectation and the light she had just found. As she hesitated, the world felt frozen. Would she step back inside, leaving behind the shadows, or would she retreat into the safety of her old life? Jake could only wait, heart pounding, breath hanging on the line of what could happen next. Finally, Sarah took a deep breath and stepped away from the door, turning her back to the demands of the outside world. She looked at him, and for a heartbeat, time stopped. Just as she began to move back inside, the new group of customers turned from the entrance, a few smiling from ear to ear, and suddenly Jake knew that the moment of decision was slipping through his fingers. Would Sarah choose to step back inside and embrace the warmth of shared laughter and connection, or would she turn away, returning to the fortress of isolation that had held her captive for so long? In that charged atmosphere, the stakes hung in balance, leaving them both on the edge of something transformative. The answer rested on her shoulders, where choice met courage, and the end of a chapter felt incredibly close. What would she choose?